Good evening, everyone. You've tuned in to Paradigm Shifters. Paradigm Shifters are people who are making a difference in the human collective at this time on our planet. It's a time of awakening. And my special paradigm shifter tonight is helping people awaken, well, specifically in three ways. She leans on the Tibetan heritage for her styles of teaching dancing where she teaches herself and others to imbue the essence of Tibetan deities in their own beingness. Also, she helps people learn to die. The Tibetan style is called phowa. It's a system of moving that vital energy out of a person's body when they're ready to pass over into the next world. And it's supposed to give you access to a much higher level of beingness once you've left this plane. And also Qi Gong, that wonderful, wonderful healing technique through movement, medical Qi Gong. So join me in meeting Rachel von Dessel from Santa Cruz, California, and also from the University of San Diego.
Thank you, Veronica.
So I know you have been a dancer all your life and that you teach dancing, and that's something you've just done because it's a part of your fitness, right?
Dancing, actually, not so much fitness as it is a deep longing for that sort of movement that brings the whole body-mind into one unity in time and space.
Wow, that's great. I love it. And you teach a whole broad spectrum of it, don't you?
I do.
So how did you move from that into, would you say, into the Tibetan consciousness, or was it into Qigong, or what's your journey like?
Well, Qigong and Tibetan Buddhism arrived in my life around the same time, and it was a time when many Asian people were coming to the States because of persecution and oppression.
Like
and
the boat
also,
people kind of time?
Yeah, it was a difficult time. Mm-hmm. Tibet was invaded by China in 1959, and a lot of Tibetans fled. And so they came here, so I didn't need to travel to the east. I had all these amazing teachers here. So I met my heart teacher, Lama Rinpoche, and Dr. Zhang, my Qigong master, about the same time, which would be late 80s. And just continued to study both of those forms ever since.
And you teach them as well?
I do, yes.
So tell me a little bit, and tell our listeners a little bit about the Tibetan dance. I know that's not your major study, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, it's something I've done. Pema Oseling, which is the retreat center that Lama Tarchen has up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Mm-hmm. Every summer there's a huge ritual and celebration called Drupchen, and it engages lots of practitioners in dancing. And since I'm a dancer, I help train people in that form of dance. And so it's a whole day of many different kinds of dancing, different deity dances, done at the end of that retreat.
What's a deity dance?
So part of that is that you imagine and visualize yourself as a specific deity according to that specific dance, and you use mudra and mantra, music, and movement generally in a circle. Many of the dances are done in a circle. So there's a unity and a community is happening as well. And you're dressed in ornate costumes and masks. It's very detailed.
Oh, really? What's it called again?
These dances are called the Lama Dances, and it's for the Drupchen celebration in the summers there. And it's supposedly the highest form of meditation is the dance.
Is it higher because you lose physical, you know what I mean? You lose your physical sense?
No, and probably it's a heightened physical sense because you're emanating the deity in the physical form. So you are becoming the deity, you're channeling or manifesting, whatever you want to call it, into the physical reality here. So it's as if your voice, your movement, your body, you're dressed as the deity, you've become a light being. Wow. So it's like an intensified experience of the body in some ways, but it's also an altered state of
That
the
sounds
body.
wonderful. I think I want to come rushing down and go to one.
Yeah, you should. That would be great.
And can a person do that if she hasn't studied as long as you have?
You mean be involved in the dances?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, definitely.
So you can come in as a neophyte, can you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we all do. Mm-hmm. That's where we start. Yeah.
So that kind of, it's Tibetan Buddhist, right?
Right.
But is it any link to, there's a lot of dances throughout India, aren't there? Sacred dances. Is it linked to that?
Right. I think the Indian tradition, which is basically Hindu, is different than the Tibetan tradition. I mean, the Buddha was born in India and then came to Tibet through Padmasambhava. But once it was in Tibet, it became mixed with the Bon tradition. So it's a little different than how it developed in India, and especially the dancing, because the dance is really a reflection of the culture. And of course, Tibetans are, Mongols peoples, and Indians aren't. They're a whole different kind of cultural heritage.
But the goal of the dance is similar, is it not?
I think,
Which is to
and
bring
I'm not
deities.
totally well versed in the Indian form, but I think the Indian form often tells a story, Hindu stories, and it is about becoming a deity. Some of them, at least, I'm pretty sure, are about that. And the Tibetan ones are, I think, probably more based on the deity, just being the deity and moving in a meditative way in a group, in a circle. And the Indian dances, as far as I've seen, aren't so circular. They're a little different.
And the circle would be like the cohesiveness or the coherence of a community, would it?
Right, right.
That's wonderful. So I want to jump around here because I'm so excited about all the facets of what you're doing. So maybe we'll go back just to the Tibetan dancing and move into Tibet and the idea of dying. It's called phowa. Can you explain something about the Tibetan dying, either the rituals or what they're to expect?
There's a specific practice that one can learn, and anyone can do it. There are teachings, often phowa teachings around the world.
You call it phowa?
Phowa? P-H-O-W-A,
okay.
phowa. Mm-hmm. And this is a specific practice that you can do at your own death, or you can do it for other people, your animals, whatever. And it's a way of moving the consciousness from the heart center where it abides, the life-bearing consciousness that moves from life to life in Tibetan Buddhism. Moving that up the center channel and out into, there's a variety of places, but most probably a Pure Land, of which there are many, depending on your resonance with the deity, or into the Buddha's heart. And, you can go directly there. And so it's a sound that you make as you travel that little dot. It's called a tigle up the channel and out through the top of your head and out into the most pure, wonderful space that you can possibly imagine. And so that's something you can do for the dying as well as for yourself.
What kind of sounds? Dying. Are they sounds that are complicated? Or I don't want you to help us.
No, they're very simple sounds, but they can be a little disconcerting maybe. If I do it on the phone, I don't know.
But what's interesting to me is that like taking consciousness and steering it up through the channel out? Is it like inviting it to move out of the body and into the...
Yes.
What did you call it? The... not New Lands.
Pure Lands, or the purest state that you can possibly imagine, the Buddha's heart, whatever. Yeah.
Is that
so you have a destination to go to.
Is it often done? I mean, is it can you tell us any stories about people that have had that experience, or?
Well, I've done phowa for people, both my parents, for instance, and I've had also lamas do phowa for both of their deaths. And then, there are many, many stories about people who've done phowa, but actually, phowa is a practice for people who aren't 100% certain that they can realize the clear light of death, which is enlightenment, during the dying process.
Oh, so it's to help us.
It's like life insurance or death insurance.
Oh, nice.
For you. Yeah.
I want
So
that.
if you have any doubts about it, and a lot of us do, then you can do phowa before that time of the clear light of death, which is the final vision of death. And then you are assured that you've gone to a really pure place.
So if that's a practice, before do you actually feel your consciousness move out and then bring it back in until you need to let it go?
Yes, you practice that, but once you've become practiced or adept at phowa, then you close that up and you don't practice it anymore until you're going to die, or you're doing it for other people. Yeah.
Well, that's really intriguing. So have you practiced?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And did it help your parents a lot? You had said, when we were talking a little earlier, you said that they weren't necessarily in this same consciousness that you've been exploring for quite a while. How did they respond to the phowa?
Well, they were there by association with me, because we're all so interconnected. So just by the fact that I'm their daughter and I've done these practices for so long and I've talked to them about it, and, just by the very fact that we have that karmic connection, their life stream was affected by that really profoundly. And
were they conscious of it?
My father more than my mother, because my mother had a series of strokes near the end. And so she had become quite childlike. Mm-hmm. So it was a really different process with her than with my father. And I tried to simplify for her so that she understood that it was important to go towards the brightest lights as she died. So that's what I really tried to help her with in particular, as well as doing phowa for her.
So if she had been even more disconnected, could you have done it like training her to do that?
She wouldn't have done it for herself. I would have done it for her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
which you can do,
You can do. I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful news, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it is news. It's good. It's great news because it gives you something positive to do with people. And, I think it's important that they agree to it beforehand. I think that's, for me, that was important. But, it might not necessarily be true because, a person lost and confused, if you help them to the light, I think that can be positive, even if it hasn't been a, preordained agreement between the two of you. So I'm not. The jury's still out on that one.
Have you worked with? First of all, how old? Your dad was a very bright guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How old was he?
He was almost 94 when he died.
Oh, good. So the reason I asked that is because it seems like some might be although when you're older, you kind of know what the next step's going to be, don't you? So he might have been curious. He was curious about it?
He was very curious about it. He was very curious about Buddhism, too. He loved to talk about it. And he was really grateful to discuss many of the dying practices, how people think about it all over the world. And he said, "Oh, yeah, you can read the Tibetan Book of the Dead to me when I'm dead." I was like, okay.
Yeah. That's nice, eh? Oh, wow. So have you been studying it for a long time, like years and years, or?
I think it's been like 10, 25 years maybe-ish.
And I think when I first called you, I said I would really like to learn it. And you said that it's good. I think this is what you said, if I remember correctly. You said it's good to learn from a Lama or a Tibetan teacher.
I think it's really good. I think it's good to start by reading something and see if you really have an attraction to it. So I think I told you to read Sogyal Rinpoche's book on.
And I've read most of it, but it's a lot of reading, and I have so many.
It's a lot of reading. It's a very long book. But it doesn't matter if you finish it or not. It's just then you sort of get the feeling for what it is. And if you're interested enough to try to make a connection with an actual teacher.
I am. I was absolutely, well, you're here as the interlocutor, if you will. I was fascinated by this book when I was really pouring into it and bought it for several people because
Oh, great.
I think it's
Good.
for the Western mind, it's really important for us to wander through some of their different approaches, the different sentiments about it. What about the Bardos? The first thing that cracked me up, made me laugh, was that the Bardos, which I had always heard were these really spooky places you can go into when you die if you're not clear enough, and instead I got a lot more expression, a lot more room to think about it. But the first part of it is we are living in a Bardo. That made me
Exactly.
burst
Yeah.
out laughing. I just howled and went, oh, that's why it's a
Yeah.
struggle, huh?
This is the Bardo between birth and death.
Yeah.
Then you have the Bardo between death and birth.
But I had never heard it put that way. Obviously, I was new at learning this, But it's a wonderful book.
Yeah. So the Bardos, if you become enlightened, if you realize the clear light of death, you don't go in the Bardo. If you do phowa and you go into a Pure Land, you don't go into a Bardo. A Bardo basically is a subtle body, a light body or an energy body that happens after you're dead, and it can be in the form of your past life or your future life. The jury is still out on that one too, but some form like that. And then you go through a series of, they say maybe 49 days, although it could be less or more, of experiences that have to do with the karmic imprint that you've created through the experiences that you've had in your life and lives. So when your karma ripens can be past lives, this lives, and it can be negative, positive, neutral, all of the above, none of the, It can be a big combination or mostly one, mostly another. But at that point, then you are blown by the energy of that karma, of that imprint, of those experiences into some experiences in this Bardo where you can move instantaneously through walls, through time and space. So it's a different kind of experience than this grounded one we have in the body.
So it isn't like purgatory or any of those in the other religious.
I'm not so well versed in the Catholic ideas, but they do have ghosts. They do have, and ghosts seem like they can move through walls and different things, like they're disembodied consciousness to some degree.
And
right?
I guess the way I understood it was that thoughts and feelings and reactions that we've got we can land in a kind of a swill of those.
Yeah, you're going through experience. That's called ripened karma.
Ripened karma. But then what you're saying is if we can get that light focus, we can go right through it or not have to experience it.
Exactly. There are many ways to mitigate karma. And one of them to mitigate it in the death experience is to have loving thoughts of compassion, so that if you're surrounded by light and love as you die, this experience is so powerful and so transformative that if you go into that experience without fear, more with those loving thoughts, it can really mitigate what will happen to you afterwards. Wow. Now, my father gave his body to science, which I thought was a really amazing choice that he did, so that he had that going for him, that his last act on the earth was a giving to other people.
And was he happier when he passed? What am I trying to say? Well, what you just said about compassion and so on, if we're happier by the time we cross.
Right.
And not in a state of emotional suffering, I suppose, eh?
Right. So having crying, wailing, unhappy people around you, because you're so super sensitive, because your consciousness gets more and more subtle as you get closer to crossing over that bridge or whatever from life to the next experience, you pick up on what's around you, even if it's not stated. So it's really important to have a clear, open, loving space around dying people to help them have the very best experience possible as they go. And the caretakers, my father was in assisted living, and I was there a lot of the time with him. But the caregiver said that his death was pretty incredible for them, and surprising for me because he was very afraid of dying.
Oh, he was.
But he didn't death rattle. He didn't take drugs. No pain meds. he just got lighter and lighter and lighter, basically.
Wow.
Which was amazing. I mean, really incredible to be a witness to that experience.
Well, that reminds me of something I've heard, which is that, and you can correct this if it's not quite accurate, but that the Tibetan lamas and rinpoches don't get rigor mortis because they just lighten up by, I was thinking of your dad getting lighter and lighter. They release their old beliefs and old reactions as a part of their progress, and then they don't harden up after they cross. Is that right?
Right. Well, it's considered karma in the Tibetan system, so your beliefs, all of your concepts, all of your experiences, memory, and all of that, if you've cleared your karma and you've done enough practice, you can realize the clear light of death, and then you're enlightened, so the body has a whole different trajectory than it would from a regular person who has to go through the Bardos and rebirth and all of that. Because you're not going to be reborn again unless you choose to be. So you can choose if you want to be and if you want to go and be in a certain situation to help people, whatever. Also, people experience rainbow body. Some lamas do rainbow body where people will see rainbows in the sky when they die, and all that's left is their hair and nails, for instance, or relics, can be little gemstones and so on.
So they essentially evaporate or dissipate.
Exactly.
Isn't that amazing, hey?
It's a magical display.
Wow.
And that's the thing, I love the best about Buddhism is that they say, well, anything can happen anytime and often does. So we have limitations in our conceptual way of viewing things, but really, in reality, there is none of that.
So they're not really hooked into the whole physical that we are. Is that what you're saying? The physiology and
I think there's less attachment.
Yeah,
less attachment to the way things are, and that things can be a variety of ways rather than one singular way seems right or something like that.
Well, I love the stories. There were some stories in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying of beings that knew that they were going to pass, so they went off by themselves to deal with it alone. And then I think in one of them it was the rainbow death.
A rainbow body, yeah.
Yes. But I really like that concept of they know they're dying, so they go, and I guess to release themselves from attachments and so on, and they leave that way.
Right, because if you're a highly developed being and you know when you're going to die, there aren't that many beings around that can help you. And since really dying is something we have to do ourselves, going into a situation where there is less attachment, let's say you're out in the forest, you're not in your home where you have many things that you've been attached to in your life, and then you don't have anyone around you to
weep
make
and
that
wail.
experience different in whatever way. So it's just you and your winds and channels in your body and what you're experiencing without any interruption from the outside.
And what are winds and channels?
Yeah. Winds and channels is a way of looking at the body so that the channel is something that energy, they call wind, or energy runs through. Because they think that we get energy from breathing. The actual air around us, not just oxygen, but energy, comes into the body through the breath. So that there is a system in the body of winds and channels all over the body. You could see it maybe as aligned with acupuncture meridians. And there's a center channel and two major channels in the torso that have, and the center channel has chakras, which are gathering points of crossing energy that spin. So they are either, they're either spinning energy in or out of the body, depending on which way they're spinning. And then you have that drop in the heart, which you use for phowa, which is the life-bearing drop of indestructible energy that passes from life to life. And within the death process, all the energies eventually come to that one dot and merge into it.
Well, let's jump from there into Qigong, because that seems to be a logical transition, doesn't it? Which is the use of this energy, is it not?
Right, definitely.
And Qigong itself looks like a dance. It does, doesn't it?
It is a dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, from ancient China, before there was ever speech, there was sound probably, but not language. People would dance. They dance and do circle dances generally. And then I think as time went on, they said, oh, hey, this movement really is good for this ailment. And they started to systematize the different dance movements, and that was Qigong. So Qigong is definitely dance.
So is that old?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
oh
yeah.
My.
Very old. Yeah, yeah. And so it's systematized dance movement to heal the body.
Yeah. Without actual music or anything, right?
You can use music to Qigong, but it's not, integral to it at all. Like Tibetan dance, there's musical accompaniment, but Qigong not. Yeah, Qigong, is a more Taoist feeling to it, where it's a natural thing where you can use Qi, trees for energy, or rivers or ocean, mountains. All the natural world can be used to gain energy, to tonify your energy. So it's very much aligned now with traditional Chinese medicine.
And do you practice Qigong healing work and so on?
Yeah.
And do you use it for specific ailments? I'm not wanting to get you in trouble here, so you don't need to diagnose or anything.
Yeah,
but do
I don't diagnose.
Do you help people with that?
Yeah, it's mainly heat and cold, because you're using energy from different sources, the sun or the moon. Somebody could have a cold disease where they would need more heat, like sun energy. So you would do that, or vice versa. That some people might need a cooling, sort of Arctic feeling about it. Some people need energy dispelled, and some people need more energy put in, tonified.
And do you do what they call medical Qigong?
Yes, I studied that at Samra University in L.A., which I don't think Samra exists anymore, but yeah, I did study that with Dr. Zhang back in L.A., yeah.
I heard that over in, I guess in China, it used to be that people who had, for example, a very, terminal illness, they would just set them up to be doing Qigong all day, every day, and quite often it would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only that, because healthcare is so expensive these days, the self-healing quality of Qigong, of just doing those exercises, is so amazing, can really help with a variety of diseases. And, it's free.
But it's sort of interesting, because we live in a fairly toxic, and I agree with you, it's a wonderful idea. We live in a fairly toxic environment. When you're talking about the winds and channels, and I'm sort of smiling, going, when you do Qigong, the energy that you choose can run through the channels to clear out toxicity?
That's the whole idea. Yeah, that's the main thing that you're doing with Qigong, is you're running energy, the purest energy. So I do wild goose Qigong. For instance, the wild geese, they're mythical creatures. They fly to other planetary systems, and they bring back amazing energy to this world system. So you're using that energy. You have a relationship to them, the wild geese, and you're doing forms that mimic their movement sometimes. So, but you can use that energy to clear through. So because they're thinking most disease is an obstruction of energy in the body, or a lack of space in the body. So you're trying to bring more space, more life force, more energy through the whole body in an even way. You want the whole body to be in a unity of vibration and flow.
But it's a little like embodying a deity in the other dances, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So you get the persona, or you get the essence of whatever.
And the archetype, of that deity.
Wow, that's really strengthening. Do you have any stories of people who work their way through things? Like, I keep thinking about things like the brain these days. The brain is really under siege, because I think it's trying to evolve, and it's getting trapped by so many toxic elements. And I think of Alzheimer's or dementia, like your mom, strokes and so on.
Yeah, I think here's what I think about that, which, I haven't been through Alzheimer's and stroke healing. I don't know, if that's happening or not. I hope so. I hope that some people are finding relief for that. But there is this thought, and that is that stroke looks bad, But the woman, the doctor, the neurologist who had a stroke,
Oh,
and she
Jill
was on
Bolte Taylor?
yeah.
Yes.
She said, well, when I was having the stroke, part of my brain was in this unity, and then the other part would try to fight back to use the phone, and then I'd go back out into this total bliss unity phase. And I think that stroke could be a level of being that we don't understand very well, but it's very much sometimes with heart opening, that it could be a level of development, actually, instead of a disease.
Because the goal, what you're talking about is that the goal is a little different. It's not just about living to be 79 or 112 or something. It's about opening your heart and becoming more fulfilled and fulfilling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Experiencing that heart opening, because back around to the Tibetans, all the energy in the whole body goes into the grosser energy, goes into subtler energy, and eventually ends up in the heart center, where you're going to transform it into your next incarnation. So it's extremely important that the heart be open at that point.
And what is that like, to have a heart open? I know what it means to me right now, but I'm thinking that they probably have a way, like a pulse or a sense of a person having changed or evoked something, or
I think it's, from my perspective, it's the ability to move the energy through the center and out through the higher centers of the body, if we're talking about death in particular. But if we're not, then it's the ability to move from because the hands and arms are directly reflected from the heart center. So your heart energy, if you're open, you can move that out of your arms and hands and, reach out and give and express that heart energy in the world. And I believe that's the sign of having an open heart.
And often an open heart is a choice, isn't it? We have to kind of get into it and choose it.
I think we do, because, there's so many difficulties in becoming a developed human being that it's so almost part of that development is going through a shutdown and seeing how to open that again.
Yeah, I think of the Dalai Lama, and I think that he is roaming around teaching about compassion and opening the heart. And he probably has every reason to have it kind of closed off, eh?
Yeah, he says, my religion is compassion.
But he's in essence homeless, in a sense, isn't he?
I think his home is everywhere. He fled Tibet, and of course that's just heartrending. But, what a gift to the rest of the world that the Tibetans had to flee and come out of their, sequestered situation and bring it to the rest of the world. I mean, it's just been remarkable, incredible time. And, I think that the Dalai Lama probably is not as attached to personhood so much, that he really and truly would love to see world peace and world joy, and that's his world, is where he lives now.
That's amazing. It's just a wonderful it's a wonderful tool for us all to experience. So back to opening the heart, I think we all need to learn that, and probably more than one time in our life, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not quite sure what tribe it is, but there is one that in the spring equinox takes a pot out and breaks it and says, this is so that my heart can heal better than it was before. And I think it's through breaking our hearts and being shut down and going through these processes that we come to a subtler level of understanding, what heals heartbreak. What is it that we can give to one another that's going to be most helpful in that situation?
It's always service, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I received an email recently with a picture of the heart, and it came from a mutual friend of yours, a woman who told me to call you, Jaya. And I believe it expressed, I can't remember, I keep wanting to go back and reread it, but it expressed that the heart is, 10,000 times more intelligent than the brain?
Mm-hmm.
Something
Well,
like
when Tibetans talk about the brain, they're pointing at the heart.
that. Aha.
Yeah, that's where it all resides, is in the heart center. The brain is the office, the heart is the bedroom. All the really important stuff goes on in the heart.
So back to your dancing, which is kind of interesting, because to me, you're weaving all this. They all weave together, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Don't this beautifully?
Well, I think they weave together because it's something that I want. That I brought all these different forms into my life, and then I finding the connections between them, so that it becomes a unity for me.
And you said at the very beginning that you wanted to explore body-mind connection, or you knew there was a strong body-mind connection. Has that been kind of the fusing? Has that been the what? I know that you've become very conscious. Do you also meditate and so on, or you meditate through your dance?
I meditate. I do many forms of meditation. Sitting, for instance, because 3-year retreat, which I did.
Oh,
is a
talk
lot of
about
sitting.
that. I want to know about
that. Well, it's a 24/7, 12-hour day sitting.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's a lot of sadhana practice. That's deity practice. It's arduous. It is. But so there's a lot of sitting meditation in my life, but also dancing and Qigong. Qigong is actually moving meditation itself. There are parts of Qigong that are rather active, and then as you become balanced within the form itself, there are moments of more stillness and meditation. So it's a way of balancing the energy into meditation in the body, through the body. And the mind being part of the body, the brain being housed in the body and also part of the body. So not separate at all. And then consciousness is everywhere. So.
And unconsciousness is everywhere?
Consciousness is everywhere.
Oh, consciousness is everywhere.
Yeah, and unconsciousness too.
Very pervasive. This is a small aside, but I thought you might find it interesting. There is a fellow in Vancouver that we interviewed, and he has a place called the Original Yin. And what he did was he took Qigong. He's a very high-tech guy from Cambridge, but he took Qigong because he's from Taiwan and he had been steeped in it. And he made machines, gym machines, that when you go through the machines, it all does the Qigong energy movement through your body. So he said you come through these and you become Qigong master. It might have taken you many years to do that. Isn't that interesting?
It was a Qi machine? Is that what
Not
it
a
was?
machine. He's got even a huge kind of gyroscope-looking thing that you can stand in and then you can turn upside down or you can make it go.
Wow.
He has huge machines, all kinds of them that he worked with others to design technologically so every motion has a Qigong influence effect. And he also, I was injured and he was working on me, and he also gets to the point where he just plays the piano to you and the energy just keeps moving. So,
yeah, music, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's the Original Yin. You might find it just a very fascinating thing to look at online one day.
I will look that up. Original Yin.
Yes, it's in Vancouver,
Great.
BC. But anyway, that's a small aside, but it's a wonderful thought to think that Qigong and other energy techniques of healing are coming to us to give us some breath of fresh air.
Right. I think they're a real addition to allopathic medicine and all the things, the science that we've worked so hard to develop here. I think it's just a great addition, and that these forms can really work together to create even more health and healing. I mean, we're living so long these days, I think we've really done a lot with disease, and now quality of life would be good too.
So what do you think, or what do the Tibetans think about the fact that the universe, there seem to be a lot more downloads of very high frequency energy, and there are more and more people doing things like Qigong and so on. Do you think that the energy is perking through the collective to give us access to a more coherent collective mind potential? Big question.
It's a big question, but let's include the internet. I mean, it's become a one world system here. there is this worldwide web that's connecting everybody. We're all having similar experiences. There's so much information everybody has that's sort of similar. And so I think we are bridging the gaps between cultures and between nations, and that between spirits. There's a lot of pulling together of different ideas and divergent things into a unity right now. And I think that's the amazing quality of the web itself. And then in general, what each society and culture has to bring to that is now not a secret anymore. It's a really shared experience. So that if you're interested in that, there's just so much, so rich and deep. Profound.
I was just thinking as you said that, yes, and we're even able to connect with galactic information.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a really exciting time that we're living in, isn't it?
That is for sure.
Yeah, so, and also online, people could learn phowa?
Phowa.
Phowa.
You can't learn it online. You can read about it. But to actually learn phowa, you need to go to a teaching with a living master, someone who's an enlightened being, probably, but they won't say so if they're Tibetan.
Why won't they? Are they very humble and without ego? Is that part of the deal?
Well, part of it is, you don't go around advertising. It's a very inner thing, so they don't advertise themselves. So they're just teaching, walking the walk, and So, but Ayan Rinpoche is one of the masters of the world, phowa. That's Ayang. If you ever find him in your neighborhood, I highly suggest.
Ayang. Does he travel a lot?
He travels because the Dalai Lama told him to go around the world and teach phowa because he's so amazing at it. And so you can go all over the world. There are teachings of phowa, and you want to just go and learn the technique. Even if you're not Buddhist, doesn't matter. You can still learn that technique, and it's, as I say, it's death insurance.
I really want to learn it. Somebody told me years ago. This is funny. You might make you laugh. And somebody told me years and years ago that if you learned the pressure points on the top of your head, you can press them a certain way, and your spirit will pop out.
I believe it. I do. Phowa, you have to, after you've become adept at it, you put a little cross vajra on there to keep the energy in. You don't want your spirit to pop out the top of your head too much, really. You want to keep it with you so you can use it for this life. Yeah. Well, because if it pops out, where to go and get it back. Okay.
I guess some of us thought, well, if you really had the bun, or if you have a really terminal illness or something, then you could just...
yeah. Well, then, yes. Then for phowa, if you know you're going to die, but it has to be, not like in 6 months, like in a week or a month, maybe. I don't want to say exactly, but close to death. Then while you still have the energy to accomplish it, you can do phowa. Yeah, that's allowed.
And that hastens. How does that work? Does that hasten the process?
That means if you succeed at phowa, you've propelled your consciousness into a pure place, so you're no longer living and your body dies. Yeah.
It just seems with so many people that are kind of warehoused in various stages between life and death that it might be a nice thing. Yeah, I find that I suffer for them, and I think, no, we don't want to do that,
Yeah, that's what I meant by quality of life. Now we've got people living long. Now we have to work on their quality of life as they live really long. Yeah. And that Qigong could really be beneficial in those situations, definitely.
How long do you spend each day on Qigong?
I probably spend maybe an hour on Qigong, just Qigong, a day, practicing my own practice of it.
So you spend a lot of your day in meditation of various types, do you?
Various types. I mean, I maybe if I do a lot of Qigong one day, I would sit the next day. It really varies because I teach and I have a really busy schedule. Yeah.
And you teach online, you teach classes, but you don't teach phowa.
No, I'm not considered an enlightened being or even a master of any sort or any kind. So I teach Introduction to Tibetan Buddhism at San Diego School for Integrative Studies, San Diego University for Integrative Studies. And so I don't teach phowa. I don't teach any kind of traditional Tibetan practices that a Lama would teach, for instance.
What does it
I
take
teach more about psychology and Tibetan Buddhism, which really go together well. They
they do
beautifully
okay.
together. Yeah.
How does that work? What kind of psychology do they teach?
Well, the psychology from that Buddhist perspective is that we need to become our own therapists and really do inquiry about what's going on with us. So we're not just unconsciously floating through life, but that we really, mature our being by taking responsibility for our actions and behaviors and really being aware of what we're doing. So it's from that perspective.
Is it the inquiry like who am I? That sort of thing?
I think inquiry, who am I, is one inquiry one could do. But also, okay, I have this thing that's happening to me over and over, whatever it might be. Let's say I have relationship problems, let's say. I keep breaking off relationships. So I'm not going to do that again right now. I'm going to sit down and say, okay, what is the connecting link between these breakups? What is it that I'm doing? What is my part in that? How could I change that so that I might be more open and more tolerant, more patient with other people? Like really get down to the behavior factor and see. So this is specifically, psychology as far as what am I doing in the world? Not so much who am I, but what is it that I'm doing in the world? And by that, knowing oneself, like kind of truly that way, through the behavior and
Physician, heal thyself. And
Yeah.
do they believe that a lot of those patterns of behavior and so on come in from karma as a reactive source, or is that Tibetan to believe that?
Well, because they're habitual, these are behaviors that we've done over time. So we've actually created karma by perpetrating those behaviors over and over on ourselves and others. And so it could be that behavior initiated from maybe some accidental thing that we did in the past, and then it became habitual. There are various ways that it could happen. But for me, the basic thing that I would want to be looking at is, what are my habitual behaviors, and are they serving me and others or not? And if they are not, what can I do to change that in a way to be more beneficial?
And sometimes it's hard to discover those, but I guess the feedback comes through seeing what's going on around you, right?
Right. Well, that's the initial thing is, okay, so is this working or not working? And then the inquiry into what is it that I'm doing that might be unconscious to me right now.
That's really interesting. So you're teaching that kind of psychology for master's psychology students or nursing practitioners or various people in...
No, people generally who are pursuing a degree in psychology. Yeah.
Seems like that would be really interesting. Do they, what was I going to say about psychology? Is it very different from Western psychology? I mean, that part of it is a little bit different, but in some cases it isn't, is it?
Well, I think the main difference is in Western psychology, you would have a therapist be guiding you through this process of inquiry.
Right, okay.
And then from the Tibetan point of view, we can do it ourselves if we just, meditation being a part of that you would need to sit and quiet the mind to be able to discover what's going on in the mind. Otherwise, it's just those tapes that are running that are a little unconscious all the time.
That might even argue with you all the time.
Yeah.
Do the Tibetans work with the higher self or with spirit guides or any of that sort of thing?
I think, that probably that happens, but what I'm teaching is more down to earth feeling of that you're dealing with your own mind and your own activity and your own behavior as much as possible. Just simply, clearly focusing on that. Then if you were to get clear about what it is, you could invoke the deity, which is spirit help, because you have a personal deity that has different qualities. You know, if it's strength that you need, it's a certain deity. If it's love, it's a different deity. If it's healing, it could be white Tara.
So anyone,
so there's
you can
different
bring in
qualities.
You could choose to bring in whichever quality source you wish.
Exactly. And so from that aspect, you would be invoking the higher power of those deities. Then if you were to do therapy with somebody else, you would visualize you both as a deity, whatever deity, and then you would be emanating energies back and forth that are of those deities in the healing process with someone.
I like that a lot. That sounds like it would take a long time to train into being who you are.
Well,
maybe it always does.
We've got our whole life, don't we?
And maybe more. Eh?
And most probably a lot more. Many lives. Many lives. We have time to do it.
So a lot of what you're talking about is really about energy, which is one of my favorite subjects, actually. Hey.
Totally.
Whether
you know,
it's
the basis of all the energy systems.
And the Tibetans have been using that for centuries and centuries and centuries, eh?
Definitely. Yeah. You know, because ultimately the body is created by an energy field, not vice versa. So that, you know, the energy coalesces into the physical form, but you still have gross, all degrees of gross to subtle energies running through your body, and as you become more spiritually inclined and adept, the subtler energies become more prevalent and more useful for you. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. So they're more useful in the kinds of things you're wanting to do in the world.
So what about longevity and energy? Do you know anything about that from the Tibetan perspective?
Well, they do a lot of practice that is longevity practice. There are longevity arrows. You know, there's a lot of practicing to achieve longevity so that you can be more developed. Because if you die young, you know, that's kind of cut that development short in that lifetime. And you know, there's things like you have an animal part of you. You know, it's a very complicated system, very deep and profound. So there are many aspects to the practice like that.
Can you recommend? Well, I guess the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying is a great place to start, right?
Good place to start. Really good place to start. You know, there are many, many books on Tibetan Buddhism, but I would say that would be a good place to start. And then from there, you know, there's a big bibliography. I think there you can start to choose more specifically what you're interested in. But I would highly recommend that book as a good place to start.
And it does sound to me that a lot of what you're speaking about is easily not interspersed, what am I trying to say, melded with our awakening Western culture. It's not like it's really strange and way out there, is it?
No, it isn't. And, you know, as we become more and more familiar with it, of course, it will become a Western system because it will adjust to, you know, our culture, our mind, the way we're trained.
Our individual thinking mind.
Right, so that it serves us better. You know, it's in transition still now to a certain degree.
Well, I like what you said about
future,
I like what you said about the internet, where we're learning to intermingle our cultures and our, you know, to be one. Eh?
Right. Yeah. So I think it will develop more and more into a Western system. Yeah, that serves us.
Well, and if someone wanted to take your, I know that they're graduate classes, they're master's classes, right?
Yeah.
In Tibet, is it Tibetan psychology?
Yes.
Yeah, where would they find more information on that?
So they could go to online, sduis.edu.
SDUIS, San Diego Integral Studies.
It's San Diego University for Integrative Studies.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Oh, I've really enjoyed this, and you're very peaceful and have a wonderful vibration, Rachel. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I have so enjoyed speaking with you, and you are an incredible interviewer.
Aw,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Well, I hope that we'll meet in person one day
I
there in
hope
Santa
so.
Cruz.
Yeah. That would be great. I hope you're coming down soon.
I'd love to. We'll see if we can work that out.
Wonderful.
And for all of you listeners, thank you so much for listening. That was Rachel von Dessel speaking about, well, we were talking about dying, dancing, and Qi Gong, and so many of the ways these come together in her life as a multi-aspected practitioner, and in your life too, as we all learn. Thank you so much for listening, and many, many blessings. 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 Blessings.